Welcome to Bitter to Better, the podcast dedicated to transforming heartbreak into healing. I'm Angie, and I'm thrilled to be joined by a panel of incredible divorce professionals who are here to guide you through the tumultuous journey of divorce and lead you towards a brighter, more fulfilling future. In each 30-minute episode, twice a week, Wednesday evenings and Sunday mornings, we'll dive deep into the challenges, emotions, and lessons that come with divorce. Whether you're navigating the legal labyrinth, managing co parenting conflicts, or simply looking to rebuild your life, we've got invaluable insights and inspiring stories lined up just for you. So if you're ready to shift from the bitterness of ending relationships to the empowerment of starting anew, you are in the right place. Let's turn those difficult chapters into stepping stones towards a better tomorrow. So grab your coffee or tea or whatever beverage you so desire, get cozy, and let's get started. So, first off, I want to introduce our panel experts. We have Laurel Ann Porter, Kimberly Laura, and Tracy Rickards. If each of you ladies can just do a brief intro of who you are, what you do, and then we can get right into the heart of the matter, why we're here. So, Laurel Ann, let's start with you.
Sure. Great. Thanks for having me, Angie. My name is Laurel Ann Porter, and I'm a shamanic artist. And what I do for folks is I have a program that I developed in creative grieving, which really helps people to reclaim their creative spirit, which oftentimes is just quashed by grief, and to try to find ways to bring a little bit of joy back into life. We make it safe for joy to return. So this is a process that I developed when I was grieving after the loss of my mother. And the technique is actually something I developed after my brother died. And when I realized that those skills that we have in moving through grief can be applied in other areas of our life, that actually ended up being much more powerful than anything else. So thanks for having me.
Thank you, Laurel Ann. Okay, Kimberly, let's go over to you and then to Tracy.
Sure. Thank you again for having me. My name is Kimberly Laura. I am a licensed professional counselor and certified divorce coach. I founded Blossom Coaching, where I work exclusively with people going through divorce as a result of my own very painful divorce. I am the person that I wish I knew when I was going through my divorce, when my world was upside down, when I didn't know if I was coming or going. And now I choose to help other people through it, through their divorce experiences, to gain clarity, confidence, and courage to make the best choices for an empowered future. And I find great joy in that. So thank you again.
Thank you, Kimberly. All right, Tracy, you're up.
Hi there, I'm Tracy Records. My business is called Sassy Success, and I'm a business coach, emotional clearing practitioner, and hypnotherapist for fempreneurs. Of course, I support all women, but I do specialize with people who are wanting to start a business or run a business. And at a time when you're going through a divorce with so much on your plate, you can probably use all the support you can get mentally, emotionally, and financially. And I want to be that go-to place to help you through.
Oh, fabulous. You know what? We've got such great um, insight here that we can just glean so much. So, this premiere episode is part one of a four-part series. And the series is called From Heartbreak to Hope, Embracing the Journey of Divorce. And this episode is recognizing the stages of grief. The panel is going to explore the emotional landscape of divorce, addressing the initial heartbreak and the feelings of loss that often accompany it. However, we do want to focus on the transformative journey that follows. So, one thing that I know I've heard before and several times when going through divorce is one of the hardest things to grieve someone who is still living. So at this point, I'd like each of you to just share even just a short story, just a couple minutes, focusing on this topic of grief, some key challenges and the lesson that you learned through that. So let's maybe start off with um, let's start reverse and we'll go Tracy first and then hit Laurel Ann up and then Kimberly.
Mhm.
Yeah, certainly. So, fun fact about me, two-time divorcee, now in a 22-year relationship. So, things have turned around. But in one of my divorces particular, it was a terrible time, and grieving someone who is still there, that is the toughest challenge ever. I was a mother of three children, married to my husband for 10 years, and watched him, first of all, slowly descend into a drug addiction and watch him continually choose drugs and many other horrifying things over me and the children. And it started off slow at first and then very quickly. And the thing about the grief is still there, even though they are still there. And so it's like you don't really even get a closure. It's not like you can go to some kind of funeral and close the door on it. So it's a different process, almost, that you get stuck in the grieving cycle over and over and over. So each time that he would leave on a drug bender, for example, and then come back and I take him back, I'd almost start the whole grieving process over again. And so it wasn't until I got a hold of emotional clearing practitioner, which is why I do that now, help me get strong in myself so that I could start to make good decisions for myself, make stronger choices for myself, regardless of what he was doing, regardless of his behavior.
Mm, yeah, so that lesson was really in effect choosing you and choosing to make those better decisions, right?
Yes, absolutely. At the same time, while it was heartbreaking, I was the sole breadwinner, taking care of three small children, very responsible at my job as a financial controller, with the whole weight of the world on my shoulders. If it wasn't for the professionals that I reached out to that I could lean on, it might have been a different end of a story for me.
Mm, wow. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Laurel Ann,
Yeah.
what story can you grasp onto and share that grief has shared with you a lesson and what was that challenge and how what lesson did you learn from it?
Yeah, this one I'm actually gonna talk about when a friendship ended, which in many ways for me is as equally profound a relationship as a marriage.
Mm,
And this all happened, it was probably only just about 2 years after my brother died, and so I was still very kind of fresh in the process of what I had experienced when my brother passed. And when you go through any profound experience of grief and loss, it doesn't take that long to realize that rage is completely useless. And so when this friendship ended, I decided, you know what? The healthiest way to go about this in a way that doesn't have me clinging to all this bitterness and anger and regret is to just pretend like this person died. And
mm,
then I was like, okay, I'm going to pretend like this person has died and I'm just going to grieve for that person. And that way I can relieve myself and him of the guilt and the blame and all that other kind of stuff, which actually doesn't really help us move past the situation. And so for me, learning how to grieve for someone who is still alive actually helps me open up my field and my being for someday possibilities. Like the friend that friendship ended, I actually now am back in touch with that friend again. And I think it's because I was able to get a healthier, cleaner break through that grieving process that allowed things to just sort of emerge again naturally without having to hang on to all that old baggage.
mm. Well, that's an interesting thing too because grieving is not we think of instantly the first thing for me that comes to mind is a partner, but it's not always there's so many different aspects, right? So Of course, being in a divorce group that we're all part of, that's the first thing that comes to mind. But even when you're going through divorce, there's other grievings that uh, can be at play as well.
Oh, absolutely. Your friends, your identity, your way of being, all of that is shifting, and it's important to take the time to grieve for all of those aspects.
Oh, 100%. Kimberly, I'm really intrigued to hear your aspect because I know you've got several layers of that as well.
Mhm.
So what challenges did you go through in the grieving process, and what lessons did you learn from that?
Right. So, grief is very complicated and there are many layers of it. There are many types of grief. For me, I got married and I was completely in love with my husband. One of the hardest things for me in living 23 years with him and then getting divorced was realizing that the person I married wasn't the person that I thought I was married. So, back to the hardest things you'll ever do is grieve someone who is
Mhm.
living. I lost the idea of who I thought I was marrying. It turned out we both probably became very different people and grew apart, but it was still the shock of, you don't get married. Most of us don't get married thinking we're going to get divorced. We think of the happily ever after. And when that doesn't happen, um, it's heartbreaking. So you're kind of losing not only your partner, but the person you thought your partner was, and then who you think you're going to be with, that partner in the future. Um, I struggled with my identity also. So not only did I lose the identity of the person that who I thought he was, but I lost myself too. So part of my own journey is reestablishing myself, finding my identity again, reacquainting myself with myself. So we grieve a lot of things, and sometimes it's just who we are, who
Mm.
we have been, and celebrating who we can become. So,
Oh my God, that's an amazing point to kind of segue into um, the next part that I want to get into, which is perhaps what a misconception is surrounding grief. And if, you know what, let's just leave it at that because then I want to get into three things that you can advice or what advice you can give for somebody who is going through this grieving process. So, Kimberly, let's start with you. What do you feel is a misconception when it comes to the topic of grief?
I think that people tend to think that grief is exclusively with a loss like death. But grief could be so many other things. It could be, there's anticipatory grief when you think something's coming and, you know it's coming. So you're already grieving. There's the
Mm.
disenfranchised grief that we talked about, where things are happening, like maybe your pet dies or maybe you lose your
Mm.
job, empty nest, that people don't really know about. And I think there's a type of shame or guilt for acknowledging that grief, because maybe you don't think that it's important enough or valid enough. So you're reluctant to reach out to friends, family, a therapist, whoever, for help and support. But I encourage you too, like if you are feeling any kind of grief or loss, no matter how big or small or socially accepted or not, if you're sad, reach out for help.
Oh, that's so huge. Before I get to Lorelana and Tracy, just something that really cued in my mind is that when I was going through some really crappy times, I was thinking and I was looking at everybody else around, seeing all these happy faces, and it's like, well, everybody else is doing fine. What's wrong with me? Why can't I handle A, B, C, and X, Y, Z? So
Mhm.
it's shedding that as well. And you know what? You have no idea what's going through somebody else's relationships. So what's going on in somebody else's four walls could be very drastically different than what you see on the outside.
And you don't need to add on to your guilt, or you don't need to add on to your grief, guilt and shame and self-doubt and you don't need to add all that other stuff on. So
Oh, 100%.
Mhm.
But we're good at that, right? We're so
Mhm.
good at that.
We're
Oh my
experts
goodness.
at not treating ourselves kindly. Yes.
Right? My goodness. Like all the things that, if there's ever something that we should be less good at, it's that.
Yes.
So, Laurel Ann, what do you feel is a misconception around the topic of grief?
Oh, there's so many. um, One of the initial ones I think of is that I don't really think of them as stages of grief. I think of them as phases because it's not like you do one and you're done with it and you never have to do it again. Grief is it layers upon itself, it turns back on itself, it visits again. But the thing that is sort of my latest big thing that I really harp on, if you will, is I believe, and I talked about this in the recent summit, that if we can learn how to purposefully, consciously, and creatively grieve when we get married, because we are shifting our identity. We are going from a single person to a partnered person. And if we don't practice these skills at that joyful time where we say, oh, I'm going to leave this single person behind and I'm going to step into this new version, and we honor everything that we were up to that point, then if we can do that again at the divorce time where we say, okay, that phase of my life is over for whatever reason, for whoever's fault, and just use those skills that we can develop anytime we face loss or a shift or a disruption in our lives. If we can practice those skills, then when something major like a divorce or something really big happens, we can strengthen those skills and say, okay, I'm going to take this opportunity to look at what's coming my way, decide for myself what kind of person I want to be, and then move through our grief that way. And just understanding that it's a natural process. And it's totally natural and normal to feel all kinds of ways, because we are all going to feel all kinds of ways when we're experiencing this.
It's so true. Like we're all different human beings. We experience things differently, and how we would experience grief or loss is going to be different than somebody else. Tracy, what is something that you feel might be a misconception surrounding this topic?
Yeah, I think for me it's the concept of when we get married that somehow the other person is completing us and that we are now whole because we're coupled. And so then if we go through the process of separating and then we somehow feel empty and broken. And in reality, as spiritual beings, we're already whole in and of ourselves. There may be a piece that we need to work on ourselves and feeling, believing in ourselves, being our own best friend, having that self-care and being whole on our own and bringing that piece to the marriage. Right. And then, maybe marriage actually stands a better chance that way if we have two whole people coming together, as opposed to having the marriage as a way of holding two people together that is maybe not a healthy way. Codependencies and other, maybe masking some other things that need to be addressed.
Love, love that. Like it's interesting because each one of you has just a little bit different perspective and interesting way, which I love that. So at this point, let's imagine somebody close to you has just come to you. They've just shared with you that they're leaving their partner. they're going to be going through this stage of grief. Even though they are deciding this, what is one thing that you would share with them? What one thing would you impart with them? Tracy, I can see those wheels turning. I can smell it.
Yeah, I think I've just really just stated it. No, seeing ourselves as spiritual beings, right? We tend to, we're not human doings, we are human beings, and our world is set up so that we hang our worth on what we do and what we accomplish and what we achieve. But just the fact that we are who we are, learn to value that, learn to really accept our worth regardless of our circumstances, and really heal that part of us, then we can really take on anything that the world throws at us. Once we acknowledge and accept ourselves as whole, complete, and yeah, that's it.
Yeah, that's amazing. Laurel Ann, what would your approach be to this person?
So I'm gonna say something that might actually be kind of unpopular. Because I know people have a lot of really, when you're going through divorce and suddenly there's a division, all the finances, and then, some people find themselves in a very, very difficult financial situation, for a whole variety of reasons. But in my experience, the best way to shed all of these old wounds is to allow any of those finances to just resolve themselves. And yes, of course, you want to get your fair share, you want to get your equity, but if you spend all this time fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting, that's a lot of energy that is not serving you. The sooner you can get to the point where you say, okay, I'm taking steps to prioritize my well-being, I'm going to get free, because for many women, it is literally a matter of freedom. I'm going to get free. I'm going to get safe. I'm going to get well. And I'm going to let all the chips fall where they may.
Hmm.
So it might not be popular when people are looking to get whatever is their fair share financially. But to me, that helps me move through life a little easier.
And it's brilliant. I mean, it's incredible because yeah, we're holding on, and it's all that angst, right? So it's really pulling at our soul, and we stay there. We stay in that. Ugh, I want to, I want to fight for everything, and it's not a good space to be in. Not for you, and definitely not that other person. It's likely very antagonistic. So, and it's just not, like you said, serving anybody. Kimberly.
Yeah, so I think in the beginning stages, if somebody first comes to me, a friend, a client, anybody, it's still probably so raw, and they're still probably in shock. So I think what I would say to somebody, what I do say to people is, you have to go through it to get through it. And I am going to be a safe place for you to go through it, and we'll get you through it. They may not be ready to hear, but I think that it's important to plant the seed that a transition is coming, and transition is an end of something, but it's also a beginning of something else. So, helping them see that they do have choices, they do have opportunities, right? So transition is really an opportunity to create a new beginning. And again, they might not be ready to see that because the grief and shock, and, they might just be so overwhelmed, but just knowing that I'll be here for you and I'm a safe place for you. And that's, I recommend that for just to support them, because it could be very scary, lots of emotion. So, but you have to go through it to get through it. Because if you don't go through it, then it'll catch up with you eventually.
You know what? It's like that rug. You can only put so many dust bunnies underneath the rug, and eventually they're going to fall out, and it's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be pretty. So healing is not pristine and it's not pretty, but it's powerful. It's powerful, and you will not be the same person afterwards. But you're gonna the beauty is that you're not going to be the same person afterwards. So this is a perfect way to segue into what our next episode is going to be, which is the power of mindset. You know what? We get trapped in the cycle of negativity after divorce. And with the next episode, Power of Mindset, we're going to dive deep into the transformative journey of shifting your mindset from pain to possibility. So I want to invite and encourage viewers to join us as we explore powerful strategies to harness that strength, the strength of your thoughts, to reshape your outlook on life after heartbreak. Our panel next week of experts and fellow survivors, I like to maybe recoin it as thrivers, will share their heartfelt stories and unique insights on embracing change, rebuilding confidence, and cultivating resilience. We want to discover mindset shifts that can lead you from heartbreak to hope, and to learn how to transform your life one thought at a time. Whether you're newly divorced or navigating the long road to recovery, this episode is going to provide you the tools and inspiration you need to create a brighter future. So tune in to uncover the power of your mindset next week. You do not want to miss this. So I want to thank each and every one of you wonderful women here and the audience for watching. And I hope that this has brought you some insights, some knowledge, some nuggets that you can take and apply to your life, whether you're going through divorce or whatever relationship you can, and inevitably will experience grief and loss. I encourage you listeners to subscribe, to rate and review. Let us know what you thought of this episode. Was it helpful? What did you take away from it? And one last thought, remember, no matter how bitter this ending may seem, your journey to better is just beginning. So until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.